Retirement is the culmination of decades of hard work, saving, and investing. And yet, the moment you get there, the game quietly changes. The strategies that served you so well during your working years, those years when the goal was growth, they're no longer sufficient on their own. And not because you're wrong, but because retirement asks a different question altogether about your money. Accumulation is about building assets. Retirement is about generating predictable, consistent income and trying to preserve what you've already built. And that shift, more than any market movement, is really where most retirement frustration begins. Unfortunately, many retirees never really make that transition, right? They carry accumulation phase strategies straight into retirement with kind of the same portfolio structure, the same risk assumptions, the same mental model. And on the surface, everything still looks reasonable. But underneath, if we don't do something, the portfolio becomes more exposed, both to market risk, to timing risk, and probably bigger than ever right now is the risk of actually living longer than we expected. I joke that it's not uncommon for us probably in 10 years to be able to get a spleen or a new kidney on Amazon and get it 2-day shipping. But this isn't reckless behavior. It's understandable behavior because most of us were trained, not just consumers, but advisors for decades to think one way about money, which is during the accumulation phase of life, growth is the only priority, right? You saved aggressively, you took risk intentionally, you trusted time and compounding to do the heavy lifting. Sure, volatility was uncomfortable, but we could survive it because markets recovered, right? The compounding or time is the healer of all market losses. And so new contributions kept flowing in. We were dollar cost averaging. Losses were temporary. But in retirement, that entire dynamic, it reverses because contributions stop. Now we have to take withdrawals out of the portfolio, right? So when withdrawals begin, losses are no longer temporary. They're going to permanently reduce the pool of assets available to generate that future income. And so that's really the first belief or paradigm shift. Retirement is not accumulation with a lower speed limit. It is a different phase with different risks and different objectives. And this is really where I hear a familiar sentence. People tell me, Cody, I did everything right, but this really feels more fragile than I ever expected. And this is more important than ever because it tells us the issue isn't effort, discipline, or intelligence. It's really a phase mismatch. We're trying to measure retirement success using accumulation era scorecards, and this creates anxiety even when the numbers look really good. And so once people recognize that this phase change needs to happen, the tension often starts to ease for them. Most retirement advice still treats risk as a single concept, right? Market volatility goes up, market volatility goes down, but retirement risk is not just one-dimensional because once withdrawals begin, risk becomes layered and compounding. Downside market risk matters more because losses now coincide with spending. This sequence of returns risk means when losses occur can matter more than how large those losses actually are. Of course, we have inflation, which quietly erodes purchasing power over decades, especially in portfolios that are trying to be too safe, that are leaning too heavily on those, quote, safe assets. Obviously, geopolitical risk and interest rate renewal risk can cause income to fall, especially in those conservative portfolios. And then, like I said, longevity risk, this risk of living longer than your money lasts. 50, 60 years ago, people retired at 65, died at 68. They ate bacon every day, smoked cigarettes, didn't go to the gym, right? And so things have changed and everything is different. And again, this risk of living longer than your money is the one no projection can solve with certainty. A 25 or 30-year retirement is no longer kind of the typical, right? Running out of money late in life isn't a theoretical problem. It's actually a real one. Go look at how many, Hallmark puts out the study about how many people have turned 100. It's pretty eye-opening. There was a billboard in Times Square, I believe, that said the first baby to live till 140 is now alive. Now, I'm not sure I want to live till 140, right? I better be really healthy and sharp and, again, able to get some of those things on Amazon to help me with. But here's the mistake that most retirees actually make unintentionally. They ask one pool of assets to solve every problem all at once. Generate income, control volatility, fight inflation, survive market downturns, last an unknown lifespan. When everything depends on one structure, something is always going to break. That's why many portfolios look diversified on paper, but they feel super fragile in real life. And the issue isn't diversification, it's design. And so again, during accumulation, income was a byproduct of growth. In retirement, that reverses. Income is no longer the outcome, it really becomes the starting point. And once income is dependable, consistent, predictable. That pressure really comes off of the rest of the portfolio. People stop reacting emotionally. They stop forcing growth assets to behave like income assets. They stop living at the mercy of market timing. I've seen this moment happen countless times because once income is known and certain, the conversation starts to change from, what if the market goes down? How do we want to live? That's when retirement starts to feel very, very comfortable. Accumulation is kind of like spring and summer. Retirement is fall and winter. Same land, same farmer, different objective. You don't plant seeds in winter and get frustrated when nothing grows. You redesign the portfolio mathematically because the season has now changed. And retirement demands the same type of humility. Most retirement stress is not about money. I'm going to say that over and over. It's about trying to solve retirement with accumulation era thinking. Retirement works best when your money supports your lifestyle, not when your life is forced to kind of orbit around your portfolio. So if this way of thinking about retirement feels different, it's intentional. And that's what this channel is about. It's about helping you understand why retirement feels harder than it should before we ever talk about tactics or tools. And we will get to the solutions of how do we actually go about solving these issues. And again, knowing that when we hit our head on the pillow at night, we feel absolutely amazing regardless of what's going on in the world geopolitically, what a president tweets, what the price of bread is, etc. And in the next video, we're going to really start unpacking what a well-designed retirement income plan actually looks like once these belief shifts are in place. And if you want to keep going, I'll see you there.